We're live.
We're live. Okay, great. Um, Hello, everyone. Welcome to our last faculty council meeting of 2021. It's hard to believe that we've made it through this difficult semester, but here we are, and I, for one, am grateful. Let me start then with thanks. There are so many people that worked so hard to make this semester, which started in the deep worry associated with the Delta variant, work. We all recognize the amazing efforts of Dr. Amir Barzan, who began standing up a state-of-the-art testing program in January of 2021 and adjusted that program to the changing needs of the pandemic on our campus. He balanced science with all of our worries. On more than one occasion, he called me to understand more about faculty concerns, listened carefully, and adjusted his planning accordingly. He described to me how his team was working around the clock, and we all owe this group a great deal. Faculty Executive Committee Meg Zamorodi was also deeply involved in organizing a student volunteer corps that was referred to affectionately as Meg's Army. To Meg and her team and to those students, again, a huge thanks. Our provost, who we will say a little bit more about later, worked very diligently as well throughout the pandemic. He too called to ask me to help him understand faculty concerns in more detail. It is an insightful person who recognizes when their own worldview and expertise might be getting in the way of solving problems. Bob had these insights and acted on them to improve communication, so I want to thank him for that. The Faculty Executive Committee also deserves a great deal of thanks. Our committee began the pandemic acting as a conduit for information gathering and feedback for the campus as a whole. Your elected faculty representatives on that committee brought your voice loud and clear to every table. I thank them for their good counsel for me and for their robust representation of all of you. Likewise, the office and the staff of faculty governance, Helena Canego, Khadijah Murray, and Emma Cromwell, together with our secretary of the faculty, Jill Moore, have all been absolutely incredible. Pivoting in how we hold meetings to accommodate fast evolving situations, not just the pandemic, getting documents out, editing letters, and also helping me think through many issues, often without time to spare. I personally owe them so much. But in truth, it has taken everyone in our campus community to move through this difficult time. And I should note, it's not over yet. You, the faculty, staff, our graduate student instructors have all been there to work with students who we know have suffered greatly. You have been steadfast in your commitment both to student well-being and to our students' education. Your research and scholarship continues to change the world. And now, officially halfway through my term as chair, it remains the honor of my career to represent you in this way. I'm also happy to note the good news this morning that 2 buildings on our campus have been renamed to honor people who were trailblazers on our campus. Hortense Clinton, the first Black professor at UNC, hired into the School of Social Work, personal shout out there, and Henry Owl, the first Native American student at UNC. This is a victory that was led by the Commission on Race, History, and a Way Forward, led by Pat Parker and Jim Laludis, and our Chancellor, who takes these recommendations to the Board of Trustees for their approval. When people have always been well represented, it sometimes takes some education to understand why representation is important. And thanks to Pat, Jim, the members of the commission, and to our chancellor for doing that education. And to our board of trustees, thank you for approving these changes that will increase representation and belonging on our campus. Today, I am focusing on being thankful, but I want you to know that that does not mean that I don't recognize how tired we all are and how difficult this year has been. I hope this holiday season will be a time of renewal for you in whatever way is most meaningful. I appreciate you, our campus, and I wish you the very best holiday season. And with that, I'll turn it over to our chancellor for his remarks.
Thank you, Mimi, and it's great to be with everyone this afternoon, and I hope everyone had a good LDOC and are ready for the end of the semester and exams, and preparing for commencement in 2 weekends from now. And I recall being in a series of meetings back in late July and early August when there was so much uncertainty and anxiety about the impact of the Delta variant on our fall planning. And I said at that time, let's just get to Thanksgiving. And so we got to Thanksgiving, and now we're coming down the home stretch of what's been a challenging yet rewarding semester. And I also just want to thank everyone that Mimi's already mentioned, especially our infectious disease public health experts that have been helping us over these past 2 years, but also to our students, faculty, and staff who have really taken the COVID standards, COVID-19 community standards so seriously. And I know Bob's going to say a little bit more later about COVID and sort of where we are and how we've been planning for the spring semester. And I also want to echo, Mimi, what you've said, and deep appreciation of all that Bob Lewin has done in helping to lead that effort over the past 18 to 24 months. So Bob will provide some more updates on that. What I would like to cover today, just a little more about today's announcement on building renamings, and thank you, Mimi, for acknowledging that. I think is an important day for our campus. I want to say a little bit about our mental health challenges and needs on the campus, a little about our ongoing leadership searches, and then a quick introduction to the budget and finance discussion that we're going to have a little later in the meeting with Becky Mangini and Nate Knuffman. So as Mimi's already mentioned, we did announce this morning that our Board of Trustees approved 2 building renaming recommendations that I put forward at our November 4th Board of Trustee meeting. And the Student Affairs Office now holds the name Henry Owl, and Residence Hall 1 has been renamed for Hortense McClinton, and the signage is already up. There's still some additional work to be done on the stone above the doors of those buildings, but the street signage is up and it looks fantastic. I've had a number of people send pictures today, but I do want to thank all of those that were involved in helping us to get to the renaming process. Henry Owl was the first American Indian and the first person of color to enroll at Carolina. He graduated with a master's in history in 1929. His master's thesis focused on Cherokee history and sovereignty. He served as an educator in Indian reservation schools and as a counselor to Indian veterans of World War II. And Henry Owl was a courageous fighter for Cherokee Indian civil rights. And when I spoke with his daughter, Gladys, who lives in Seattle, about 3 weeks ago, she could not have been more proud of her father as she shared some stories about him. Made me feel proud that he really was an ambassador for Carolina many, many years beyond his graduation date in 1929. But she was more grateful to her father's alma mater, the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, for honoring him in this way. Hortense McClinton was the first Black faculty member at Carolina, beginning her appointment in 1966. And Hortense, who many of you have had the opportunity to meet because she's been back to campus, she overcame the obstacles of a Jim Crow society and distinguished herself as a pioneer and national leader in desegregating the social work profession. And I was able to speak with Hortense over the phone again about 3 weeks ago, still very sharp at 103 years of age. She was delighted and talked about hopefully making a trip to Chapel Hill this coming spring with her nephew. They live in Silver Spring, Maryland, to come and visit the residence hall, now named in her honor. So I'm grateful to our naming committee and for their work in vetting the submitted names and helping to put forward these recommendations. And again, I really appreciate our Board of Trustees making this decision to honor these 2 incredible Tar Heels. On the COVID front, and I know Bob's going to mention more, but I just again want to thank everybody in the community for getting vaccinated, following our community standards, and getting the necessary testing done this semester. But as you well know, that some of the COVID challenges intersected with the mental health challenges on our campus. And I just want to thank all of you who attended and participated in the Mental Health Summit on November 15th. A special thanks to you, Mimi, and others within Faculty Council who gave presentations and moderated sessions. I want to also acknowledge the hard work of Dr. Samantha Meltzer-Brody and Vice Chancellor Amy Johnson for leading that event on a relatively short notice. They pulled that summit together in about 3.5, 4 weeks, and really came off well. It was well attended, over 750 participants. But thanks also to Samantha and Amy for helping with the ongoing strategy efforts that'll be necessary to be sure that we can get this right. I think addressing our community's mental health needs will take a sustained effort. We've already begun taking steps, and we'll incorporate input from the summit and future sessions to be sure that we are doing everything possible to address these challenges. Just to review some of the highlights from the summit, we are transitioning the mental health task force that was created in 2018 into a permanent committee. And so that is taking shape, and will begin their work in January. We're beginning in February. Carolina will partner with the JED Foundation and officially be designated a JED campus, which was discussed at the summit. And we announced just on Wednesday of this week that we will add a wellness day to the spring calendar, the spring 2022 calendar. That additional day or wellness day will be April the 14th, which is the Thursday before Easter, giving our students a 4-day weekend. We're also looking at incorporating wellness days into future years. We have a committee that's looking at the academic calendars for the next 2 years to see how we can try to perhaps add 2 or 3 days into each semester, and to give faculty enough time to plan for that, which became a bit of a challenge with this spring semester. So I'd appreciate your feedback on the summit and what you'd like to see moving forward. Also, feedback on the academic calendar is always welcome as we look at potential wellness days. We'll continue to listen to our community and support our students, faculty, and staff in every way that we can. And as I've said all along, this is a campus-wide effort, and I'm just grateful to all of you for engaging in this issue. And I'd be remiss if I didn't also mention that our parents of our students have been incredibly helpful and important in this process. As you know, back in mid-October, after the really challenging weekend we had with the suicide of a student, and we had a parent group here out on McCorkle Place that lined up tables, giving out food and drink and hugs as they had T-shirts that expressed their appreciation for all that we're doing to support the campus community and our students, but to be there for the students. And so they're a big part of this. A little about leadership searches on our campus. And so the provost search is coming to a close, and I'm taking some additional time to meet with those units that report to the provost's office for input. I receive input from every part of our campus community on major decisions like this, and this is a very important decision for our campus. I've had valuable and constructive conversations with many people over the past 3 to 4 weeks, including search committee members, our deans, our board of trustee members, and other members of the leadership team who work closely with the provost's office. And all of this feedback is important. We have feedback channels that represent every constituency on our campus, including the search committee, faculty council, and the advisory committee. Our SAC committee, which is a student advisory committee, our staff advisory committee, and the employee forum. So I just want you to know I'm listening to everyone's input, talking through it with my leadership team, and then I will make a decision about who I believe is the best candidate to put forward to our board of trustees as our next provost, and to serve as the chief academic officer for our campus. And So I do anticipate finalizing this process within the next week. And I recognize that this has taken a little longer than I had hoped, but this additional input and feedback is really important to the process. We have several other searches that are underway, and I'm pleased to say that all are going very well. Our Vice Provost for enrollment search wrapped up yesterday, and we are preparing an offer to a candidate for next week. And so I hope that we'll be able to make an announcement soon thereafter. The deanships, as you know, we have 5 deanships that we are searching for new deans. This began back in May, but we have deanships in nursing, dentistry, journalism, public health, and arts and sciences. And 2 of those will likely wrap up early in the new year, with the other 3 likely finishing up over the course of the spring semester, with the goal of having all 5 of these new deans in place by August. And I'm optimistic. I've had conversations with some of the chairs and co-chairs of the committees, as well as with some of the search firms leads, and these are going very well. Finally, for today, and I'll pass it off to Bob, but I'm pleased that you will have a chance to hear from Vice Chancellor Becky Mangini and Vice Chancellor Nate Knuffman later in the meeting to provide updates on our state budget, which, as you know, was passed a few weeks ago, and our upcoming annual raise process, our ARP, which ARP seems like a term of the past. We've not had a chance to discuss ARP in recent years, but we will have an ARP this year, and Becky's going to talk a little more about that. And I just want to add that I think on our budget and finance situation, I'm really pleased to report that we are ahead of schedule as we close out the fiscal year 21 in balancing our budget, a priority that I began discussing with all of you last fall. It may have been the October meeting that Nate and I talked about the challenges that we had with the budget and the deficit that we were faced with. But I couldn't be more pleased with the progress that we've made, and a lot of credit goes out to the deans and department chairs around our campus that had to make some difficult decisions, center directors, and everyone on campus to help us address this challenge. And again, we've made great progress. And because of this, we are in a much better position to reinvest in our people as we prepare for the ARP process that Becky and Nate will talk about. So I want to just again thank everyone for all you've done to help this help us reach the finish line for what's been a challenging, but yet I would say successful and rewarding semester. And I hope you feel the same way as Mimi's already said. I know people are tired, and I hope you'll find a way to rest and recharge batteries over the holiday break, and we'll come back for a strong start in the spring of 2022. So I'm going to pass it off to Bob, and then we're happy to take questions.
Did you want to take questions together?
I can do it however you'd like to do it, Mimi.
Oh, okay. We still have a few minutes for you. So
okay, great.
Okay. Do we have questions for the Chancellor?
Looks like Mark has a question.
Yes, thank you, Kevin.
Hi, Mark.
Is on the COVID front, in the mental health front, is anyone looking at the connection between our COVID policies and masking and mental health awareness? I know personally for me, it's very difficult for me to connect with students because I can only see just my eyes, basically, and for students to connect with one another when they can't see each other's faces. And I'm just wondering, given the great performance we've had on limiting the impact of COVID this semester, are we considering the social and mental health impact of masking on campus as we go forward into the next semester?
Sure. I think it's a great question, perhaps observation, maybe, Mark, that you've had just with your own experience. I don't want to speak for the experts. We have incredible, team there that's working on this, but that may be a topic for for Samantha and Amy Johnson and others. And as you know, over in public health and our health behavior, health education department with our experts there who have been helping us through this process, I think that would be an important next step. Bob, I'm not sure if you're aware of anything that's currently underway to analyze that.
No, I'm not aware of anything that's taking place in terms of research in that front. I will say, Mark, that we've talked quite a bit about mask wearing in the spring and whether or not, we might be in a position to relax some of the mask requirement standards. And I can talk a little bit more about that later on in the programming today to share some of the reflections about the spring and mask requirements.
That would be great. Thank you.
Jan, I'm going to get it right.
Thank you. Jan Hanek, Statistics and Operations Research. I have two questions that are somewhat related to the material and stuff that was discussed at the faculty assembly, the system-wise faculty assembly this morning. The first one is somewhat even personal to me. I have a question about the university international travel ban that was implemented like yesterday. I asked the system people whether there is a system-wide international travel ban, and Norma Houston, the chief of staff of President Hans, told me that there is no international travel ban instituted by the system. So I wanted to know, why has the university decided to cancel all previously approved international travel? And if the burden that it created on people like who had an approved travel and had already made arrangements, and now maybe they'll have to eat the money that was spent on these arrangements, like testing or something along the way.
So Jan, I'm going to ask Bob to provide some details. He and I just spoke about this yesterday morning, late morning, and I know this came at the recommendation of our infectious disease team. And I know that there are still some opportunities to, if you fall into that category, to petition, I believe, for extenuating circumstances that would still perhaps allow it, but the travel. But Bob, maybe you can provide some details.
Yeah, I can. First, with regards to your comment, I'm not sure what Norma Houston shared with you, but as far as I understand, and Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, but the president did rescind the national travel ban, but did not rescind the international travel ban. So as far as I understand, the president's office still has in place a international travel ban with allowances for chancellors and provosts within each university to approve exceptions to the travel ban. And so that's what we've been operating under this exception clause. As it relates to the decision that was made this past week, it was mainly made as a consequence of our concerns with regards to the unknowns associated with the Omicron variant, and upon a lot of consultation with our infectious disease experts, and also in concert with our UNC Global experts, particularly as it relates to the lack of control over countries banning travel and getting faculty, staff, and students stranded in international destinations and not being able to get out. And so that was very reminiscent of where we were back in the spring of 2020, when we were trying to get a lot of our faculty, staff, and students back to Chapel Hill, when many of the airports around the world were closing due to individual country travel bans. We're also following the CDC guidances. We're following the national federal guidances on international travel. As Kevin mentioned, as the Chancellor mentioned, we are just recalibrating what we mean by an exception, and that it needs to be an extraordinary circumstance. And so if you have a case where it absolutely is impossible for you to delay your travel, and you want to make that argument, then we welcome that request. So, so I hope that helps, Jan. I know it doesn't help you, but in your specific situation, but I hope it helps answer the question.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the issue is if previously approved travel being rescinded and all the stuff that goes with the cost associated with that to the traveler who made arrangements and purchased things.
Yeah, I think what we have made it clear is that, you know, travel is just not, international travel is a risk. And anybody who takes international travel on during these times has to accept the risk. And we have a disclosure that we ask everybody to sign, you know, that acknowledges and accepts, you know, those risks. And so it's going to be quite a while, I believe, until we're going to assume that international travel can be done without any risks. Now, we might be willing to accept some of those, but right now, the traveler is going to have to accept a considerable amount of that risk on the front end of these trips.
Okay, shall we move on to Allison?
Thank you so much. I'm sorry to be calling in from my car. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I'm Allison Schlobam. I am a professor at the Keenan-Flagler Business School as well. And I have a money question, but I'm actually not the money person at Keenan-Flagler, so I'm really asking it with curiosity. And I'm wondering why we aren't dipping into our endowment in these somewhat emergency times. And I'm specifically thinking of three things. So the mental health crisis that we're experiencing on our campus and other campuses seems to require more funding, and we are missing supportive structures for students from underrepresented groups, and we are losing our really important folks from underrepresented groups who operate in staff and faculty positions. And based on my anecdotal experience and from the staff perspective, that's often due to a lack of upward mobility opportunities that they can find elsewhere. And so for me, based on my understanding of the role of an endowment, and ensure that folks from future generations get to have the same experience as students from past generations, it seems important to me that we consider this. So I'm just curious where we're at with using the endowment, and if you can help me understand the role it's playing in the university moving forward.
Sure. Thanks, Allison. So let me just first of all saying that we are doing everything possible to attend to the needs that you just acknowledged. And yes, these are really important times and important needs during difficult times. We have, you know, we've brought this discussion before Faculty Council before, and Nate Knuffman walked through. I'm not sure, it was maybe 2 or 3 meetings ago, I think, and John Townsend was here as well. You know,
That was
from
about
our,
a year ago.
was it really that long ago?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, it's been that long ago. Okay. So
Yeah, and I'm sorry, this is my first year, so I promise I just wasn't being a bad student.
No worries. I feel like we've talked at a few meetings about the endowment, but at any rate, so much of it is restricted. I mean, that's answer number one. Of the unrestricted, even in the best of years, a lot of those dollars are supporting student needs and scholarships and things of that nature. But we have received, you know, we've been using HERF funding that's available, as well as some additional student security fees for funding some of the needs that you've identified. And we've recently had some of our alumni and donors step up to provide some private funding for these needs, and working closely to be sure that we have additional counselors and psychologists down at CAPS. Granted, we can always use more, and we're working really hard with student affairs and campus health to be able to do that. But it's not just as easy as you know, taking money off the top of the endowment to put toward this, but we are addressing these needs through other funding sources. And Bob, I don't know if you want to add anything, or Nate and Becky, you're with us as well, and I know that this is a high priority for you and helping us to be sure we.
Kevin, I would just reemphasize a point that you made to Allison, and I think it's a common misunderstanding about how endowment dollars can be used. And Allison, just for your information, every time a donor provides us with an endowment gift, it is usually associated with a very specific ask. And so it might be for an endowed professor, or it might be for a specific research program, or for something very, very specific. There are times when we would love to have more of these donations given to us in discretionary, at the total discretion of a dean, or of a chair, or of the chancellor. But unfortunately, most of our dollars come in with very specific targets. And so we do not have the flexibility that your question implies.
Okay, it's my understanding that we're also accruing interest on the endowment, and we are making money. And I'm wondering if that is also restricted.
Yes, it is. In most cases, the interest needs to go back into the corpus for that particular targeted area, or go in as a spend towards what that money was originally intended to be used for. So, for example, if you are the holder of an endowed professorship, the corpus might have grown significantly over this year, but that would enable that money to then be used to further enrich that endowed professorship.
And I'll just reiterate what I said. And Allison, you're asking good questions, but we are increasing funding and support for several of these areas that you've mentioned.
Absolutely. Yeah, I am really thankful that alumni are standing up. It just seems, you know, our endowment's pretty big right now. And I was wondering, so Mimi put a really great comment in the chat I'd like to know more about. So it says, I don't know, Mimi, do you want to chime in for me? Thanks.
Well, I believe that I read that somewhere. I was asking if maybe Nate, when he talks later in today's meeting, can really clarify some of this for us. So maybe we could wait to hear from Nate, since he's the expert. Okay.
Happy to wait for Nate. Thank you all so much.
All right.
Thank you.
Terrific. Ronit, am I pronouncing that correctly?
Hi, Roni.
Yeah. Hi, Chancellor. Hi, Provost.
Hello.
I think one big challenge that this pandemic also have raised is the difficulties of our international communities, the faculty, the students, the postdocs, the staff. And there's been extreme delays, very, very, very long delays in approvals of visas, of statuses, of green cards, of work authorizations. And this has been creating lots of difficulties, both in bringing students, retaining people. We have some personnel and students and postdocs that are stuck abroad because the embassies are closed. And even for us, speaking as one international faculty member that hasn't traveled for several years now because of this pandemic, because we don't have the visa approvals and standing in line. Is there anything the university can do and mitigate that, maybe with our Congress representatives or anybody else that can have some push into approvals of all of those people that are currently in flux?
Sure. Ronit, are there specific countries that you're finding your students are having difficulty with? And I know, Barbara, Vice Provost for Global Affairs, Barbara Stevenson, has been very involved in this work and trying to, work with the embassies and help our students. But I'm just curious if there are specific areas of concern, regions.
No, actually. I mean, I have a team that's very international. We have people from Europe, from China, from India, from Israel, from many countries. And you see that everywhere, pretty much. A lot of it is the Congress or the visa approvals here in the US, but a lot of it is also the embassies in the other countries that are just closed, or and then they cannot get an interview, they cannot get a visa stamp. So there's these two challenges that we're facing, both in the US and outside of it.
Okay. Bob, I'm not sure if you have anything to add, but I do think we probably need to connect back with Vice Provost Stevenson.
Yeah, I would just say, Kevin, that I have talked to Barbara Stevenson and her team quite a bit about this. As you may know, Barbara Stevenson is a former ambassador to a foreign country. So she has a very, very solid knowledge base of how all of this works with regards to visas, et cetera. There is very little we can do when a country shuts down an embassy and therefore makes it next to impossible for the kind of paperwork that you're talking about to get processed. We do try to advocate, through our own embassies, to try to champion relief under these, and Barbara has been very good at advocating, but there's really very limited amount of advocacy that we can have that's going to be effective right now. Our goal right now is that when these embassies reopen, that we are positioned here, to take maximum advantage, of that, and to sort of make sure that the paperwork is all in place here in order to advance that to the next step. So we certainly understand the frustration and also the difficulty it has been for our international colleagues on this campus to travel home and visit family during the pandemic. But I think this is a casualty of, we're all a casualty of the pandemic here.
Jan, I think Jan had another question.
Sorry, this is a second question I got from this morning's system-wide assembly, and that President Hans has mentioned that there will be some salary bands instituted within the whole system. And later in the meeting, we were able to see some of the proposed bands for UNC-Charlotte, and they were really low. Like the maximum was much below what I know is the market rates in areas I know. So I would like to know if you could comment on how this will be affected our university, and if the proposed salary bands for our university will be shared with us before they'll actually become real.
So let me just say, Jan, there's nobody better to talk about this because she talks about salary bands for probably half of her day. This is what Becky is Mangini, and she's going to be with us here shortly to talk about this. So I'm going to ask Becky if she can address that, because that is part of some of the changes that came through recently, and she certainly can answer that better than I can for sure. I don't want to speak for you, Bob, but Becky stays on top of this and works closely with the system office.
Yeah, I think Becky's the perfect person to.
Right. So let's move our agenda so that we get there. So Bob, do you have remarks that you'd like to deliver?
Yeah, thank you, Mimi, and thank you, Kevin. I just have a few things. Just to reiterate, we've been very much involved in the planning for the spring semester. And I think a lot of the plans have been predicated on a few assumptions. And the number one assumption has been that, the great progress that has been made this fall and the tremendous cooperation that we have had, not only from our university community as it relates to vaccinations and adherence to our community standards, particularly our testing requirements for those who are not vaccinated, and the overall compliance, of our campus community. That coupled with the overwhelming support of the Orange County community has really created a really nice dynamic within our environment to promote safety on our campus. And so the numbers, continue to be quite strong. In the Orange County area, we have 71% of our population is fully vaccinated, 77% partially vaccinated, a percent positivity rate under 2%. And our campus community is extremely high. We have faculty who are running over 94, 95% vaccinated. We have our students who are right around 95% vaccinated. And our staff have made great progress over the last month or so, and they are approaching 89 to 90% vaccination rate. So I think we're very, very fortunate to be able to be living in a community and working in a community with high level of participation and sensitivity towards the health and well-being, not only of themselves and their families, but the community at large. So I think that's all very good, and we've been assuming pre-Omicron, that we will be in a very good position for the spring, working with Dr. Barza and our infectious disease experts. We have been articulating thoughts and ideas on a plan for the spring, and we'll be ready to roll some of that out very, very shortly. Omicron has raised a lot of questions, and so certainly we want to make sure that everybody on this call realizes that we will adjust based upon the science that emerges over the next 2, 3, 4 or more weeks. We had a meeting just this past week with our infectious disease experts. We are very fortunate to have these people on our team, mainly because they are having conversations with people in South Africa. They're having conversations with people at the CDC and the FDA, as well as the NIH. And so we're getting data and information in real time. I mentioned this to the Chancellor, and we initiated starting this week that we will begin having twice a week meetings with our infectious disease experts in order for us to make sure that the campus decision makers have all of the information from a worldwide perspective on what Omicron means to us and what the ramifications of this might be, if any, for the fall semester. So until something comes up concrete that is science-based, we're going to continue to move forward with our current plans, but we are prepared to make adjustments accordingly. One of the things that has certainly emerged from all of our conversations, and that is, if you're eligible for a booster, which I believe that means all of us on this call, you should get it. I can't emphasize that enough. This will also, based upon, at least from a theoretical standpoint, this will also serve everybody well in the event that the Omicron variant becomes relevant and important to us here on this campus or in our community. So I just want to further urge everyone to get a booster if possible, and encourage those that you care about to get a booster as well. Also, this is flu season, and there was very little flu last year. In fact, almost non-existent in the Orange County area. And certainly I'm sure that all of you noticed that. Encouraging everybody to get their flu shot this year, if at all possible. Again, we're expecting as people begin to move away from wearing masks, flu is going to become more relevant. And so because the symptoms are so similar to COVID, it does complicate the picture quite a bit. So encouraging everyone to get their flu shots. We've had very good participation. And if you do get your flu shot here on campus, it does contribute to the numbers that our campus health group tries to achieve as we compete with other universities for which universities have the highest percentage of their population flu vaccinated. So please participate in that as well. I think I was going to cover the Fed mandate, but I think that also is a comment, that perhaps might be best directed towards Becky, and so I'll leave that to you, Becky, to address any potential questions, related to the federal mandate. I guess that covers most of what I wanted to talk about, other than the fact that I want to come back to Jan, to your question, about international travel. We have been one of the most aggressive universities within the system and amongst our peers in terms of supporting international travel throughout this pandemic. I believe that it has distinguished us in many respects, and so we have been able to significantly fulfill our global mission. We do not want to create obstacles, Jan. We very much want to encourage international travel. We are just living in a period of unknown, and until we get a little bit more information, we're just asking that people bear with us and allow us to pause new requests for international travel and take a second look at our current commitments to support international travel over the next 3 to 4 weeks. Still, we do have a process to permit it. It's just we're asking you to reevaluate it under what we would consider an extraordinary application or extraordinary need basis. So if you do feel that you have a need to get on that plane, feel free to petition us once more to get that approval. And with that, Mimi, I'll stop there.
Okay, all right, thank you. Let's move to Becky, who is going to help us understand this change of the Board of Trustees delegation resolution on academic personnel. I don't even know quite how to describe it, so I'm going to let you do that, Becky.
Sure. Hello, everybody. It's good to see you all again. I have a short deck that addresses the delegated authority changes and a handful of other things. I've noted Bob would also like me to quickly address the federal mandate. I've got Jan's question. I'm going to go through a series of things that are somewhat related and somewhat unrelated. My deck is really short, so if you'll give me just a second, I'm going to share my screen. Can you all see that? Are you seeing the whole screen or just the PowerPoint?
We're seeing your whole screen.
All right, not sure why that's happening. Oops, let's see. Sorry about this.
Yeah,
Yep, sorry, I know you're seeing everything. I'm trying to get back to the PowerPoint. It's not letting me do that. This is, there we go.
The easiest way is often to press stop share and then start sharing again.
All right, there we go, stop share. Sorry, this is, I told Helena that I have been having trouble, and IT came up and tried to help get my share screen to work again, because it sometimes just gives me a blank screen and sometimes I get this. Helena, I'm gonna let you load it and I'll just go through accordingly. So, thank you very much. My apologies. So I'm going to talk briefly about delegated authority as it relates to personnel matters. And it seems reasonable to start with, what does delegated authority mean? So the university's Board of Trustees is obligated under the statute to have a duty to promote the sound development of the university within the function prescribed for it, helping to serve the people of the state. And I think it's really important to understand that the Board of Trustees' powers and duties are assigned not locally by the campus, but rather by the General Assembly and the Board of Governors, including through the Board of Governors by delegating certain specific authorities to the Board of Trustees. So historically, the Board of Trustees has subdelegated some of their authority to individual university personnel, which could include the Chancellor, the Provost, or others, or to committees or different entities. This past summer, the Board of Trustees at each constituent institution of the University of North Carolina was asked to review what their subdelegations were. So all of the Board of Trustees have delegated authorities. They were asked to look at which of the authority they have were subdelegated to other units, and they were asked to formally restate that authority and their delegations and subdelegations. So I want to be really clear and that the delegation of authority from the Board of Trustees to campus personnel as subdelegations is very different and separate and apart from the subdelegations or from the authorities granted to the Chancellor as the executive and administrative powers afforded to him under both General Statute 11634 and the Code of the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. Next slide. So when the university Board of Trustees went through this most recent exercise that they were each asked to do, they identified a handful of areas where there were sub-delegated authority that they wanted to bring back, or that they wanted to look different. In many cases, some of the sub-delegations were just a matter of practice and things that had happened over time. In other cases, they were things that really maybe had been moved under a previous board for some other reason. And so this exercise was really intended to say, like, this is what you all have authority for, or for them to say, this is what we have authority for. This is how we think we need to use this executive authority as the Board of Trustees. There are two spaces where this really plays into faculty matters. One is under senior academic administrative tier 2 appointments. And if we get to slide number 3 on here, the list of what qualifies as a senior academic tier 2 appointment is there. It's a lot of words. It basically means members of the Chancellor's professional staff, people who have separately designated responsibility for one area. So we have one chief enrollment officer, one chief business officer. There are often roles where there's a single person in the role. And then there are some others where there's some independence and administrative authority in program planning and allocation of resources. These are all classifications that are designated and made by the president's office at the UNC system and have been for a long time. But up until recently, I'm sorry, what was that?
Could people please mute if you're
okay? Oh, sorry. We're still on 3. So these are the types of roles that fall under senior academic administrative officers. The other place where the delegated authorities decisions impact for faculty personnel matters are in fixed term faculty appointments. If we go to the next slide, I'll talk first about the tier 2 appointments. So the Board of Trustees has, as I said, always had authority in many of these spaces, and they've always had authority to set the salary ranges, make the appointments, determine the initial salary, and make any salary changes for tier 2 employees. That's always been their authority. Up until now, the authority to appoint, to make initial salary determinations, and to make salary changes has been sub-delegated to my office and the academic personnel staff. Beginning in January, the change that they've made is that tier 2 employee appointments, so the appointment and the initial salary determination, which is all made within a pre-approved range, will return to the Board of Trustees. This will very much mirror what we currently do for tier 1 appointments. So while it seems like big change, in practice, it really is a review of the appointment and the salary determination, and we'll go through a process that we're working to develop in tandem with the Board of Trustees now for a timely review and approval. The biggest challenge for us is that we have more tier 2 appointments than we have tier 1, so we're trying to navigate the meeting frequency of the Board of Trustees. Next slide, please. The other area where the delegated authority impacts faculty is in fixed term faculty appointments. So previously, all fixed term faculty appointments for any duration were made and approved by the deans. That was a sub delegation. So the Board of Trustees had authority for it. It was sub-delegated and it had moved all the way down to the deans. Beginning in January, the trustees asked that any fixed term faculty appointments or reappointments with a term that exceeds 3 years and a base salary that exceeds $100,000 will require advance review and approval by the provost. I think it's important here. That's the provost, not the Board of Trustees. And all other appointments remain subdelegated to the deans. So in this case, the Board of Trustees said, this remains in our delegated authority. We are happy to have it subdelegated, but we'd like it somewhat centralized so that we know that the provost has his or her eyes on all of these contracts that exceed 3 years and $100,000. So that is the big change that will be executed in January. And again, we're working with the Academic Personnel Office and the Board of Trustees just to affirm that we've got a process together with the Provost's office to make this happen. So those are the big changes related to delegated authority. The next item I've been asked to talk about, next slide, briefly, is the future of work at Carolina. And this is all I have to say about that. Actually, that's not entirely true, but I figured we could all relate to this. If you'll go to the next slide. Many of you have read in the Well and elsewhere that we have a design team out of the Operational Excellence program looking at the future of work, particularly as it relates to staff. The faculty have an added amount of latitude. Many of you have advocated on behalf of your staff who during the pandemic, many of your staff worked remotely, then were asked to come back to campus in July. In some cases feel as if they were the kid left home for the holidays while parents went out of town and told not to misbehave, and they didn't misbehave. In fact, our productivity was outstanding during the pandemic, but then that group was asked to come back while there was a little bit more extended flexibility with some others. So this group is looking at what is it we can do to continue to think about ways that we can most effectively achieve our mission, number one priority, and provide a meaningful on-campus residential experience for our students, but how we can also provide some flexibility and ability for our staff in particular to benefit from some other work design. Human Resources and Finance and Operations are partnering as the sponsors of that program. We've set a number of goals to ensure that we can maintain our mission, that we can identify opportunities for growth and professional development, long range where we might see cost savings in leases and some things that are not standard expenditures. And that group has been working for a number of months. We had hoped their work might be done a little bit more quickly, but as you might expect, when you put in place a pilot program, they can't really study the pilot program until we've had a little bit of time to gather some data. We brought students back in August, and so then began looking at data in October to see, if we say we want to provide half of our programming online and half of it in person, what does that look like for staffing? We have to do some data analysis. So they've been conducting surveys, doing interviews. They're in the process of building out a playbook that we might roll out. Because that work isn't complete, we've extended the pilot program through March, and we hope to be able to have a deliverable here by the end of the calendar year, at least to leadership, to make some decisions about how we could roll something out with a plan to put in place some longer term flexible work opportunities and arrangements for staff moving forward. That's really all I have on that right now. We do expect some more deliverables from that operational excellence team, and they have done remarkable work thinking about these questions moving forward. Excuse me. Next slide. Now I get to the fun stuff. I think this is the part that most of you want to hear from me, and now this is talking about the annual raise process. I was on a meeting the other day, and I felt like I was a little bit of a broken record in saying we're still awaiting final guidance, and we're still awaiting final guidance, and we're still awaiting final guidance from the Office of State Human Resources and the UNC System Office. We are getting closer. I have one draft of guidance, but I don't yet have final guidance. So let me start there. We're waiting on the final guidance, but we know that the annual raise process will have 3 distinct parts this year. One is a mandatory base adjustment, excuse me, for all permanent EHRA and SHRA employees, and that's a 2.5% as of June 30th, 2021 salary. There is also a mandatory one-time COVID-19 bonus for all permanent EHRA and SHRA employees on payroll as of December 30th. That is a $1,000 bonus plus an additional $500 for those making less than $75,000 on June 30th, as well as law enforcement officers. There is also an element of the ARP, which is a discretionary base adjustment for SHRA and EHRA employees. And that is actually not funded by the state, but rather it's up to the campuses to determine whether they have fund availability. And it is required that we award resources based on performance. There will be caps. This is the area where we don't have a lot of detail yet, but we know that there will be a discretionary option, or we anticipate there will be a discretionary option of some sort moving forward. Prior to today, I was prepared to tell you that we would be looking at a January rollout for both elements of the mandatory piece. So we would be planning on a one-time payment of a 2.5% base adjustment retroactive to July 1 in January. And my intent was to tell you we were also planning on a bonus payment at that same time. We got guidance last evening asking if we could make the bonus payments happen before the end of the year. We are working around the clock to figure out how to beat our December payroll lockout date to ensure that you all have bonus payments in your pockets prior to the end of, or the payroll date at the end of December. And I noticed just before getting on this call that the News and Observer has already reported that we are intending to put out payments before the end of December. So if the News and Observer is reporting it, we'll find a way to work. I shouldn't say that we're going to find a way to make it happen, but we're certainly working around the clock to see how we can make that happen. The mandatory base adjustment will, however, happen in January. And then if we have capacity on a discretionary base, which we'll meet on campus once we have the guidance to figure that out, that would likely happen in March. I'll stop there on the annual raise process. I'll mention very briefly on the federal vaccine mandate that, and you can stop the slides. I think that's all my questions on that. The vaccine mandate, we continue to work on getting our full employee base vaccinated in accordance with the federal vaccine requirement. We are just under 90% for our faculty and staff base for vaccination numbers right now. We actually expect the numbers to be a little bit higher than are reported in the system because we know people have been getting vaccinated, but they haven't uploaded cards in the system because they haven't yet gotten their second vaccine. So we expect we'll see a few more cards come in as people get their second vaccine. Now's about the time they would be finishing the second vaccine if they got vaccinated immediately after the notice came out. We have made opportunities, because it's now a requirement, for people to file religious and medical exemptions. We've received medical exemption requests already and have communicated with everybody who sought a medical exemption. We have also received roughly 350, 370 religious exemptions. Some of those have been approved, others have been followed up on as people have not yet made the sufficient argument about how a strongly held religious beliefs intersects with their belief that they should not get a vaccine. And that is something that does need to be articulated in the process such that the committee can review it. Those folks have been communicated with and been given a deadline such that they can seek a religious exemption. We are now also in the process of reviewing vaccine cards in the uploads that folks made, and we'll be contacting anyone anyone whose card we have questions about, or if there are issues in the database. I think that is what I have on that. Jan, your question about salary ranges, I'm not entirely sure what President Hahn shared with you. I will say that the SHRA employee base is scheduled to move to the state career banding system probably 18 to 24 months from now. That will change some things. If it was about EHRA ranges, I think there are some things that we can talk about, but UNC-Chapel Hill is one of a few campuses that has delegated authority for our EHRA ranges. So we actually hire an outside firm that works with us to identify markets, and our market ranges look significantly different than elsewhere across the system. And that's because of the delegated authority and the market in which we sit. I don't know if that answers your question. If not, we can certainly talk about it. But I think the short answer is generally for nothing that we do lines up exactly with Charlotte. We have different market ranges that are regionally based. I think that's probably enough direct talking, and I am certain I have put enough out there that there's going to be some additional questions. So I'll stop there and try to answer your questions.
Becky, thank you so much. And thank you to your team for all you're doing about these bonuses and all these kinds of things. I mean, I know that must be really challenging. So thank you. There are questions in the chat. Jennifer, do you want to unmute and pose your question?
I can. Yeah, it's just a quick question. Is the 75,000 for the extra 500, is that base or is that base plus extras? Like, is it total? Or is it base? I think it's a core question.
I believe it's base. I have to go back and look at the guidance, but I'm fairly confident it's just base salary.
Thank you.
Yep.
And Misha is asking about where to find specific information on what is needed for a medical exemption and to whom it should be submitted.
Sure. If you go to the site where you would upload your or where you would attest to being vaccinated, which you can get to off of the COVID-19 site or directly going to the environmental health and safety site, there is a link there for both a medical and religious exemption and what you need to do. For medical exemption, there are some additional forms that your physician needs to fill out. And those are passed along then through environmental health and safety such that they will never be shared with your supervisor or others.
And Vaughn asks, do we need to upload our card if we got our booster?
Great question. At this stage in the game, fully vaccinated is the definition of fully vaccinated is 2 shots. So there's no need to update your card. That said, we're paying attention to federal guidance to see whether that will change at any point in time. Right now, there's no such indication. 2 shots or 1 a J&J shot is considered fully vaccinated after the 2 weeks following the shots.
Okay, so Margaret also posted a question in the chat, but I think she did that after Jan put his hand up.
Okay.
So Jan, you want to go ahead?
I just want the clarification. So you said that our university actually has a authority to set our own salary bands, and there's no indication that this would be changing anytime soon. Is this correct?
So yes, and it depends on the employee type. So, we have SHRA employees, we have EHRA non-faculty employees, we have tier 1, tier 2 employees, and then we have faculty employees. The authority designated for setting the ranges differs across all of those. For EHRA non-faculty employees, we hire an outside firm, we get the ranges, they're approved by the Board of Trustees, and then they're approved at the system office. So we currently have the authority to set them, but we have to defend how we got the data and what the sources are and that sort of thing. And then they're approved, and then we're allowed to use them. I don't expect that will change, though there is some discussion that the system office is planning to get out of some of the transactional work of some of the HR approvals and instead focus on setting ranges. And we have asked for those campuses that have the local authority to set the ranges that they're currently approving, would they then just hire or contract with the vendors we're using to do the assessment, or would they just take our work as they're doing it now? That's not yet been determined, but there is a recognition that particularly the research campuses have a very different market base than some of the other campuses. So I can't say it's not going to change, and that's just about the EHRA stuff. For faculty ranges, we have some local authority, and then it also goes through a series of approvals. And those are based on, it's sort of a similar process, but they go through more robust approval processes along the way. And for SHRA employees, we have no ability to set ranges. And actually, in order to change our ability to move people from SHRA to EHRA, particularly in the research space, we need statutory authority. So it's really complicated, and if there's specific examples, we can certainly talk about it. And I'm also happy to do a sort of a primer if you really want to fall asleep someday on the background of the HR personnel system for the UNC system. It'll definitely put you to sleep.
Okay, well, let's go back to the chat. We have a question from Margaret. Can you comment on raises for non-faculty EHRA?
So what I referred to was true for EHRA faculty and non-faculty employees and SHRA employees. So everybody's getting the 2.5%. Everybody's getting the bonus. Those are not performance-based. Those will happen in December and January. Additional discretionary metrics or opportunities for EHRA faculty, non-faculty, and SHRA employees is still what we're waiting on guidance about. I fully expect for SHRA employees, we will not be given the authority to make adjustments based on merit. For EHRA, non-faculty, and faculty, we may have some authority. What I just don't know is whether we'll have the resources, what the parameters are, other than it would be performance-based. So, and employees would be required to be in good standing. So if you failed to have a performance review, or if you have are under any sort of disciplinary process, you would not be eligible. And those are the other piece. I'm sorry, I should have clarified this right from the beginning. Any discretionary piece is not across the board, and it's not allowed to be across the board. So it requires leadership to evaluate based on performance and then also based on fund availability. And it's our expectation that those will be reviewed centrally this year.
Okay. Let's see. Two more questions in the chat. Beth asking, for staff who are 100% grant funded, for instance, from a research grant, does the money for raises come from the grant or from the state funds?
So the money that we're getting from the state to cover the 2.5% and the $1,000 bonus is to cover our state funded employees. It's fully expected that we will provide the raises to non-state funded employees, but we will have to use other funds to do so. And Nate can correct me if I'm misstating any of this. So that would be an expectation that it come from the grant, or from, if the dean of that unit determines it, there's an alternate source, it would come from there. But otherwise, it's expected that it would come from the primary, ideally the primary source of the salary.
Okay. And then Vaughn is asking, are there added funds for students, TAs, and graduate research assistants?
As part of the annual raise process, there are not. These are for permanent benefits earning employees. So not as part of the annual raise process and the state allocation. I know there have been other conversations about whether there are ways to look at that, but that is not part of the annual raise process.
Okay, so at this point, let's move over. Thank Becky for all of that information and for taking those questions, and move to Nate.
Thank you, Mimi. And it's great to be with you all this afternoon. I have a slide deck to work through. It's very brief. Helena, I think hopefully you can load it. I'm not going to try to follow Becky's footsteps with sharing my own screen. And I'd really like to focus my comments on two major items. One, the state budget, and go through some of the highlights there. And then number two, how that state budget fits into the UNC-Chapel Hill campus budget planning for fiscal year 23. Next slide, please. So first, I'm very pleased to be in front of this group discussing an enacted state budget. As the Chancellor recounted, I too remember vividly discussing the level of revenue uncertainty with you last year at this time. And we are in a much better position today. And it certainly did take some time to reach an agreement on a state budget. The end result is very strong. For the UNC system, all the top priorities, plus many other items, were fully funded. So enrollment growth at all UNC institutions was fully funded. It totaled nearly $67 million. The budget fully funds building reserves for operation and maintenance of newly completed facilities at constituent institutions. There's, as we've talked about, there's a significant compensation increase for faculty and staff. And I'll just note for context, and everyone here recognizes this, but UNC employees have not received a pay increase in 2 years, and not an increase consistent with state employees in 3 years. So very, very noteworthy there. The budget funds Project Kitty Hawk. That's an initiative to provide online learning opportunities for adult learners, $97 million. So a significant investment there. And then in terms of significant investments, a lot of investment in capital, over $1 billion appropriated for R&R and new buildings, very strong capital budget for the UNC system. Also over $1 billion authorized in future years. Next slide, please. So we discussed some of the system highlights. I did want to point out some of the highlights for Carolina. The budget provides $18 million for the rapidly emerging antiviral drug development initiative. This is a really exciting collaboration founded at UNC-Chapel Hill to transform drug discovery and antiviral drug development. The UNC Collaboratory receives $77 million to support research here at UNC-Chapel Hill and across the system. It also codifies the Collaboratory into statute. The budget authorizes out-of-state athletes to be eligible for in-state tuition. So that effectively reduces our scholarship expenses, but also reduces the number of students considered out of state for calculations toward our out-of-state percentage cap of 18%. And then lastly, the salary increases, significant salary increases, and I won't repeat what Becky covered, but the top line again, 2.5% base pay for all employees, $1,000 COVID or a bonus for all employees, and then another $500 bonus for certain employees making $75,000 or less. And as Becky mentioned, and I think this is important, there's one, the guidance that we're still waiting on, but two, for discretionary increases. The second portion of that is we will be evaluating the additional potential increases during our budget process. We've requested submissions from units to inform this evaluation. And so we will be handling it that way through additional information discovered through the budget process. Next slide, please. So in terms of capital highlights, one, the Kenan-Flagler Business School expansion, the budget provided $75 million for Kenan-Flagler Business School, matching the $75 million raised already by Kenan-Flagler. If you look at the budget, you will see funded amounts of $10 million in fiscal year 22 and 18.75 in fiscal year 23. That just reflects the cash flow needs over the next 2 years. The project will be fully funded. Similar thing for the School of Nursing. This project was fully funded, and the General Assembly increased the funding from what was originally proposed at $45 million up to $60 million in the final budget. And again, similar to the business school, the budget will show amounts that are slightly smaller than the 60 million in total. So 21.25 in 22 and 25.5 million in 23. But that just reflects the cash flow needs over the next 2 years. It will be fully funded. And then lastly, $61 million for repair and renovation projects here at UNC-Chapel Hill. And we've talked a lot about the facility needs across campus. That's been a consistent priority for our institution as well as the system. Very strong outcome in this budget. Just for comparison, Carolina has averaged approximately $4 million per year in R&R funding from the state over the past decade. So this includes $46 million for comprehensive renovation projects, allow us to address, for example, Phillips Hall HVAC, Hamilton Hall HVAC, Wilson Library HVAC, and fire protection needs, among others. And those are kind of larger scale, more comprehensive renovation projects. It also includes $15 million for smaller R&R projects, such as Dye and Carroll Hall elevators and the Davie air handler replacements. So $15 million, again, significant for the smaller R&R projects. Next slide, please. So what does all this mean for Carolina's budget planning? the state funding is a key variable, and it certainly helps solidify our base funding level as we plan for next year. And as many of you know, we're working on our fiscal year 23 budget at this point in time. You know, where are we in this process? Well, you can see in yellow here and on this timeline, really we're at the stage where units are submitting requests for the fiscal year 23 budget. This process timeline is really being driven by new approval requirements at the Board of Governors level and at the Board of Trustees level. The Board of Governors plans to review at the May Board of Governor meeting, and so we'll be seeking Board of Trustee approval at the March meeting. So obviously, backing up from those two dates, this means we're really reviewing requests and making decisions in the January-February timeframe. So accelerated, a lot of work here in the coming months on our budget. Next slide, please. So what are the key considerations as we work through our budget on campus? And I think, as the Chancellor mentioned, we are in a much stronger position than a year ago. We do have some limited availability for strategic reinvestment into our top priorities, and much of our process is centered around working to ensure those resources are invested in those priorities. It may be worthwhile to pause here and even just talk a little bit about the endowment and the role. And Allison's question, and Mimi, your comments earlier. First, clarifying what an endowment is and what it isn't. It's not a savings account. It's really an aggregation of individual gifts that have restrictions. Certainly great returns this past year. It was actually up 42%. So an incredible performance. But again, the vast majority of that is restricted. And more specifically, more than 90% is restricted. So Mimi, your comments were correct. And importantly, the limited unrestricted funds, they're already in play currently supporting scholarships, fellowships, advising, and Carolina Scholars among other items. So there is some limitation around our ability to really leverage the endowment to help address some of these things. The other considerations, we're facing significant pressures on our workforce. So we need to ensure we remain competitive and can meet our mission. We're also facing very significant inflationary pressures on some of our non-personnel expenses. For example, some of the pressures on the research materials and supplies and the costs there. And then lastly, a key component is really just the system office guidance. You'll see some goals and those really largely mirror many of the guiding principles we used at Carolina last year to guide our process. The expectation is that we will provide a budget data by unit, along with a short narrative to the system office and the Board of Governors for action in May. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Let's see. It looks like we have a question in the chat from Allison. Do we know the specific dollar amount available for discretionary spending as of right now, not including what's already been used?
Preliminarily, we believe we have $20 to $30 million available in discretionary, in funding that could be potentially available for recurring changes. But we're going to be informing that through this budget process by looking at some of the requests and evaluating how sufficient the base budgets really are for every unit on campus.
Thank
So
you.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to confirm I heard correctly, 20 to 30 million, and then I'll mute myself back.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's 30 million over things that are already committed within the non-discretionary budget. Do you see what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of
question.
Think of that almost above what our base budget level. So how we started fiscal year 22 and the amount of central funding that was available for each unit on campus. And then thinking about how that expenditure level compares to our revenue, we believe there is a little bit of room there. But again, some of that is very much informed by the sufficiency of that base budget. And we're gonna be working through this process to evaluate that. But we think there is a little bit of room on top of it to the tune of 20 to 30.
Okay, great.
And Nate, just to be clear, you said that's recurring or non-recurring?
Well, we do think it's recurring.
Yep.
Well, that's good news. Betsy, do you want to unmute and pose your question? Oh, she's unable to. Okay, could we please hear how support for the new undergraduate curriculum features into the budget? What exactly is the investment to ensure that we can deliver that curriculum?
Well, great question, and the Chancellor may want to expand on this. I know a lot of our focus for the budget process will be really ensuring that we are considering our top priorities and investing in those. And certainly one of those areas is our curriculum and some of our existing initiatives. And I think that will certainly be under consideration along with our strategic plan and a lot of what's included there. We've talked some about the pressures we've had on both the inflation side and then the recruitment and retention of talent, which is a really big issue. And I think really thinking through the right balance and how to think about those and top priorities.
Yeah, and that's, Nate, a good point. And one of the things that we did when we pushed the launch of the new curriculum off to the start of this coming fall as opposed to this fall, it was in part due to the pandemic, but also to ensure that we had the financial resources to do that, which we are committed to and working closely with all the units that are going to be delivering that new curriculum.
Okay. I'm not seeing other questions right now. Oh, Jan?
Yeah, sorry, I feel like maybe I'm asking too many questions. But I have a question that I'm not sure it's about the budget. It's more about the funding model. And a while ago, there was talk about potentially updating the way university was funded within itself. And that seemed to have disappeared completely. The reason why I'm asking is that I feel like some of the issues we might have with budget could be also due to the fact that some initiative is not being rewarded. In our department, we were asking whether we could admit 10 more master students and get some of the 2 million that it'll bring to the university back to the department. And we were pretty much told that no, it's probably that there is no way to do that. And we probably shouldn't admit those extra MS students. So I want to know if there is a plan maybe to update the way money is distributed throughout the university that would reward initiative and maybe new ways of doing things.
So Jan, I'll ask Nate to jump in here, but we began these conversations back in August of this year at our leadership retreat, where Nate put a plan out, a preliminary sort of framework for how we're going to go about doing this, looking at appropriation from within the university to schools and units, using an adjusted model, one that's going to be different from what we've used in the past. As you know, 4 years ago, we were talking about 5 years ago, we were talking about an RCM model, responsibility-based budgeting model, very different from our sort of historic budgeting model. We pulled back from that and began looking at a hybrid version of that. And Nate and his team have been working hard on that. We had to get our budget balanced first, which, as I mentioned earlier, we are well on our way to doing that, which is going to allow us to be better informed about how we put this model in place. And I think, to your point, it will more likely reward units that, with where enrollments are higher. And we're also looking at the 12-cell matrix that's used by the system office for the way in which appropriation and tuition dollars come back to the university. But it will be a different model, one that I think will benefit our campus and I think it'll lean more toward an RCM model, perhaps. But Nate, go ahead.
I think the Chancellor described it very well. I think when we look at our tuition and appropriation and how it's allocated across campus, there's room for improvement in terms of linkage between how how performance and credit hours and activity correlates with where those allocations are made. And so we want to ensure there's an incentive and rewarding performance. And so we have been looking at that very seriously. We did have a great conversation earlier this year at our management or our leadership conference. We've also, since that time, we spent a lot of time looking through how other universities are tackling this, and lessons learned over the last decade, really around implementing new budget models. We've started to use that, and also just working through some high level questions on how to really guide this work. And we've started this collaboration, some with started to engage the deans in some of these conversations, and some more work ahead, but we are making some progress on that, Jan. So good question.
Renee, and then I want to transition to our next topic.
Okay. I just wanted to ask the question around centers and center funding. Would anything change or is changing with the way centers are funded? And that, I don't know if they should go to Kevin or if they should go to Nate or whom, but I know there was a lot of discussion at the Community and Diversity Committee meeting for faculty governance around the Women's Center, for example. So I'm just asking the question.
No, great question. The process is meant to really be able to be able to see what pressures there are and whether there's need for adjustment. Every unit on campus, including the centers and through the provost office, can put forward those requests. We've just started to receive those. So when we looked at that timeline earlier, you saw that it was the information is just flowing in. So our team, which is fantastic, been working very hard to try to really compile that information for us to start to go through and consider. I think in terms of changes, you asked about changes. I don't think there's anything about our process that's singling out a change. More, there'll be an opportunity to consider the resources and whether that's allowing centers and other units to meet their mission.
Beth has put a question in the chat, hearing more about the hybrid RCM, considering the change in F&A distribution to units on campus. So there may be something that you all could say about that now. We can also, if that's a more detailed conversation, we could have that at another time.
I could start to talk a little bit about it, and it may deserve a longer discussion at some point in time when appropriate. I mean, certainly what we tried to do with the F&A model was better align where resources are generated with the allocation of the resources to where the resources were generated. And you saw that's been being implemented and phased in over 3 years. We're in year 2 of that kind of phase in where we're kind of moving in that direction. I see a similar path for the tuition and appropriation. We're not as far along in developing that model as the Chancellor mentioned earlier. We're still kind of evaluating and looking at some guiding principles, but part of that is aligning, again, where performance is happening with the generation, right? Where you're generating revenue and making sure that the allocations are matched. So that a dean and a unit is rewarded for activity and performance in those areas.
Okay, so it sounds like maybe in a couple months we should come back to you as that gets developed and have a more in-depth discussion about how that might work. And because of course, you know, not every unit does a lot with grant funding, and nor is that necessarily, you know, expected in particular disciplines, but that doesn't make that work any less valuable and important to our campus. So thinking about that balance would probably warrant a more in-depth discussion.
I think that's right, Mimi. I think we'll be in a stronger position in a month or two to be able to have a more in-depth conversation.
Okay, we'll plan on that. Thank you. Let's move over to Daryl Jeter, who asked us to talk a little bit about new emergency management or emergency preparedness. Daryl and Justin, thank you for coming.
Thank you for allowing us to join you all this afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, I'm Daryl Jeter. I'm with the Office of Emergency Management and Planning. And Justin Miller and I today will be just highlighting some new preparedness resources that we have available on our campus that we want to make sure that our faculty are aware of. So in the form of an introduction, as was stated earlier, and as you see on the opening slide, we want to introduce if we can advance to the next slide, we want to introduce the purpose of our Carolina Ready program itself, and then also the resources that we have available for our faculty, staff, and students. And so we are mirroring this information among our staff, and we'll be sharing it with our students as well. But we'll hone in on 4 key areas of resources: emergency action plans, some training that's available both in person as well as in a hybrid environment, some safety guides that we feel would be applicable across campus that would be of benefit. And last but certainly not least, our safety app that we want to encourage all on our campus to utilize. Before we talk about that, I do want to just put into context when we talk about emergency management planning, what our mission is. We're really talking about those combined efforts of any organizational units to protect our most valuable assets, which is, of course, our people, the students, the faculty, and the staff, from things that are might be anticipated and or are unexpected. And so we know that hazards, impacts will face our campus, whether natural, human caused, or technological. And we want to be in a position where, as a campus community, we can, speaking to our mission, we can not only build a campus culture of preparedness, but also a culture of resilience, where we have the ability to react and then to get back to our primary mission of teaching and research. And then to highlight our program, I include the organizational chart for our office only from the standpoint of, when we say emergency management, we don't want you to think of it as a department or a staff. It really is a collective system and effort that requires all of our participation. And so the key programs that are highlighted here in 3 different categories are the before, during, and after. So we have several plans that we want to make sure are in place for our campus community so that we can respond to any unanticipated impact that we face. And then we want to make sure that we train on and exercise those plans. I do note here under that category, that's why we want to make sure that even if you're not a first responder or you don't have an official response role, as a faculty member or support area in the academic space, that you are aware of and prepared to take action on your end to help safeguard yourself and your other peers on campus. And then, of course, when something does happen, being prepared to execute those plans and then to move into a phase of recovery. So now when we talk about Carolina Ready, what is Carolina Ready? It is really multidisciplinary. It is our campus preparedness campaign that we are conducting outreach to make sure there's awareness across campus of what all of our collective responsibilities are. Now, Justin and I represent the Office of Emergency Management and Planning, but I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge our partners, our other partners in campus safety and risk management, most notably in campus police and environment, health, and safety, who partner with us in helping pull together a program of education and resources to make available to you all. So the resources that we'll be sharing today is a collective effort that we have worked with our other partners in campus safety to compile and trust that they will be of value to you. And we focus in, when we talk about Carolina Ready and being Carolina Ready, we focus in on 3 different areas that we encourage. We want you to, number 1, be informed, to make sure you know how the university is going to get critical information to you in the event we have some form of an emergency to occur on campus. Number 2, we want to make sure that you are prepared. What are those plans that we have, not only as a university, but individually, so that you will be prepared to react to and respond to something that may impact. Research has indicated that when you have a plan in place, you're more likely to go down a path of effective response as opposed to panic, so that we don't get the impact of the incident or emergency doesn't become as impactful to us, and we're able to effectively have a plan of action to respond to it. And then finally, the taking action when it occurs, putting those plans in place, executing our training and our exercises so that we can respond appropriately. So with that being said, I'm going to invite Justin, who serves as our emergency management coordinator and leads this program, to highlight some of those key resources that we spoke of on the introduction. Justin.
All right, thank you, Dara. Thank you, Mima, for allowing us to speak with you all today. We have one new product that we just released a couple months ago to help really answer the question, what if? You know, we hear that a lot. You know, what if there is a hazmat spill or a hurricane? So we working with fire safety, with police, we developed an emergency action plan. And what this document does is really give you the key actions that you would need to take, you know, during those initial periods of an emergency to help keep you safe, get you outside the building, or put you in a different, a safe location in order for the first responders to come, arrive, and manage the scene. Several different components within the plan itself, you know, for how to report emergencies, you know, how you will be communicated with during those emergencies, you know, utilizing our Alert Carolina, you know, evacuation and shelter in place. You know, for about 90% of the incidents or emergencies that could happen on campus, you're either going to evacuate, you know, get out of the building, you know, something bad's happening inside, or you're going to shelter in place, something bad is happening outside, you are safer in. So if you know how to do, you know, those two actions, you know, you're pretty much set for any emergency. We also have some disabilities and special needs procedures, and then various specific hazards that could happen on campus with some different actions and resources you'll need to take. We just launched some new training programs. We have a computer-based training class, so you don't have to, you take this from home. You encourage your students to take it as well. But what this is sort of, it takes that emergency action plan and puts it into a training course, and it highlights sort of those key important pieces of it. So sort of like the Cliff Notes version of the emergency action plan. You know, walk you through a lot of those key components of the class, and you could take it through Carolina Talent, or, you know, have your students take it through our carolinaready.unc.edu website. For building-wide training, a new course that we're offering is, you know, we're going to take a cross-discipline approach, you know, with police, with fire safety, and we'll walk through your building and help you identify, you know, where are the, you know, the shelter locations, or where are good places to be if you have to, you know, to evacuate the building safely. And then after we do that walkthrough, you know, we'll have a you know, in-person or a Zoom training, and really go through some specific information about your building to help keep you safe. And we have a lot of information on our website, more on that and how to request more information. Safety guides, various new guides for different audiences. We have some for employees, a couple of them for helping students. So how can faculty and staff help students who are in distress or experiencing some kind of mental or other kind of academic issues? We have a preparedness in the classroom. This guide was put together in partnership with the College of Arts and Science, faculty and staff, for you to go ahead and read, review, and you can utilize this, you know, in your first, you know, the first week of classes. We have a student safety guide, you know, that you can share with your students, have them available, you know, on your online platforms. And then the safety app. So we rolled this out last year. I think a lot of it got hidden between all of the COVID information going out, but we have a brand new safety app, the Carolina Safety app. The previous version we stopped using, and this is going to be our new one. So main benefits here, you know, it does the friend walk, you know, where you could have someone, you know, virtually watch you walk through a different location, you know, through your GPS. You know, you can report tips anonymously. You know, there's take action guides. But I want to highlight two features here. You know, one is going to be that work alone. So if you're working alone or studying alone, the app could check in on you. So every, you know, 15 minutes, every hour. And then if you don't check in, you know, if you don't accept, you know, their push notifications, it will contact your emergency contact. So that's an interesting feature. And then a mobile blue light. We see those blue lights across campus, and now you have one in your pocket. You activate that button, and what it does will send your GPS locations to our 911 dispatch center on campus and set you up with a voice call as well. So lots of good resources there, and encourage you all to download the app, utilize it, and encourage your students to as well.
So in closing, we have our contact information here. You can certainly email us and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. Visit our website that has a link to all of the information and resources that we highlighted today. I will only say we can't predict when something will happen, but we can prepare. And the time to prepare is now. So collectively, we can work together to ensure our campus as Tar Heels, we remain resilient and we continue the great work of preparing the next generation of leaders. So with that being said, thank you so much for your time and attention on today.
Daryl and Justin, thank you very much. There is a question in the chat about practice drills, but it sounds like from what I saw in your presentation, the folks that would come to your building or work with chairs, work with deans to do that sort of a thing would be more something rather than a campus-wide drill that we would expect. Is that accurate?
Yes, so if you have a particular desire, we can work directly with your department and building on training and exercises unique to your space. We do have to conduct specialized exercises with those who have a defined responsibility in our campus emergency operations plan. That may be the exercise drill that they're speaking to. And sometimes there are opportunities for our campus community to participate in those in the capacity of volunteers. But absolutely, we do have some opportunities. So you can reach out to us and we can talk more specifically about what that can look like.
Okay, thank you very much. We're turning now to a ceremonial resolution that we may be bringing slightly prematurely. It sounds like our Provost, Bob Bluen, will be with us through January, but we didn't quite know what to expect. And so we wanted to not be remiss in expressing our appreciation. And so I'm going to turn it over to Barbara Inswissel for that.
And I think I'm going to kick it to Jill. Is that right, Jill?
Yeah, I think we have plenty of time if you want to.
I will do the procedural formalities, but Barbara, I do think you have some time for your remarks as well, if you like. We do need a motion to suspend the rules to consider a resolution that has not been previously presented to the council, and I believe Meg Zamarati was going to make that motion for us.
I am. I would like to move to suspend those rules.
Thank you. So without objection, we can suspend the rules by unanimous consent. That just means that we'll go on to hear Barbara read the motion. Any objection to suspending the rules? Okay, back to you, Barbara. Thank you.
Yes. Hi, Bob. This is Resolution 2021-10 on appreciation for the service of Robert A. Bluen, Executive Vice Chancellor and Provost of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Whereas, when appointed Executive Vice Chancellor and Provost in 2017, Bob Bluen brought experience, strategic vision, and commitment to operational excellence as Dean of the Eshelman School of Pharmacy for almost 14 years, where under his leadership, the school became ranked first in the nation. Whereas, he faithfully executed the job of Provost, which is one of the most demanding in the university, involving more than 24 direct reports, including 3 vice chancellors, 7 vice provosts, and 15 deans across the campus. Whereas he worked effectively with the chancellor and many other collaborators to create a new strategic plan to make concrete the university's vision and aspirational goals, Carolina Next, Innovations for Public Good. Whereas he initiated and oversaw the Data Science Initiative with the goal of unifying efforts across the campus in statistics and biostatistics, applied mathematics, computer science, information science, social science, behavioral science, and humanities to further strengthen this university's spirit of collaboration and to put Carolina in the forefront nationwide. Whereas he launched the Operational Excellence Initiative, which is successfully streamlining and increasing the efficiency of administrative operations across the campus. Whereas his tenure spanned one of the most challenging times in the university's history, during which he faced major challenges on many fronts and worked diligently to find meaningful, data-informed solutions, including leading the transition of the university to remote work and learning in response to the COVID-19 pandemic in March 2020, and the transition back to in-person work and learning in August 2021, excuse me. Now, therefore, we, the faculty of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, resolve to honor, recognize, and celebrate the many accomplishments of Bob Lewin and welcome him to the full-time faculty in his role as the Vaughn and Nancy Bryson Distinguished Professor in the Ushelman School of Pharmacy.
Thank you, Barbara.
Yes, and if I just want to tell you, it's great on the other side.
You mean there is life after administration?
Oh my gosh, life is wonderful.
Well, thank you. If I maybe just if you would mind if I just make a comment, is that okay?
Yes.
So first of all, let me just thank you, Barbara and Mimi and Jill and all of the faculty. It has been an honor of a lifetime to serve in this role as provost. It has not been the easiest of 4+ years. We've all been through a great deal together. And we've all had many challenges during this 4.5-year period that we have had to face together under quite unusual and sometimes stressful circumstances. But one of the things that I just want to bring to this group's attention is just a reminder of what makes a truly great university. And it's you. We are only as great as our faculty are great. And it is the job of all of us in our administrative roles to do our very best to create an environment where each and every one of you have a chance to reach your full potential as a faculty member here at UNC-Chapel Hill. And it's just been a pleasure for me to have the opportunity to work with such an incredibly gifted group of people. So thank you.
Thank you, Bob. We appreciate you. Jill, what do we do next? I'm sorry.
Well, first of all, without objection, the resolution is approved by unanimous consent of the Faculty Council. And thank you, Bob. Next, we have another a report to receive. Would you like for me to just continue, Mimi?
Yes.
Okay, so we have the annual report of the Faculty Grievance Committee to be submitted by title. The committee's report has been submitted and you've had the opportunity to read it. I believe the committee co-chair is here if there are any questions, but unless there are questions for Beth Posner, I suggest the council accept this report by unanimous consent. Are there any questions?
Allison has a question.
Sorry, I feel like that student who has a question at the end of class and the rest of the students were like, my backpack's already out. But so I've looked over the faculty grievance report and thank you so much for producing it. And again, I'm relatively new to the council, but I was surprised that there were no submissions because I mean, I hear grievances all the time. So I was just wondering if there's a concentrated effort to get this information from faculty or what it means to y'all that there are so few grievances reported.
Well, there is, so we don't do outreach if that's what you're asking for grievances, but the faculty generally know that they can come to us and there have been high profile grievances in the past that make that clear. What I can only say what I personally make of that is that the faculty grievance committee's decisions don't have a lot of teeth. They are important. They make statements about policies and procedures, but in the end, I think that faculty who have grievances sometimes perhaps don't find us to be as useful as other forms of grievance. But nevertheless, we do speak to people in non-formal ways and counsel folks about how to deal with internal grievances that maybe don't rise to the level of a full-blown formal grievance. And I'm happy to talk with you about that also. And really, we are happy to talk with anyone who has any questions about the process or has a grievance if they wonder if it should be addressed by the Faculty Grievance Committee. Always happy to speak with folks about that.
Thank you so much.
Allison, there are particular types of things that go to the grievance committee that's outlined in the faculty code. So it's not necessarily just anyone's sort of complaint. I mean, they are very specific in terms of what sorts of things the committee hears. And sometimes, having chaired the grievance committee in the past, sometimes people come and they just want to talk through whatever, and they decide not to file a grievance. And it's enough just to talk through it. Or people go to the ombuds office. There are multiple places that people can go to be heard. And
yeah, I think that's kind of what is pulling on me, because there's the EOC, there's the ombuds, there's the faculty grievance, and there's the regular HR process, and they're all really important. But it can be hard as a faculty member to know where to go with a particular issue that you're having. And there's a feeling that the EOC is here to support the university and not necessarily the actual faculty, that the ombuds is, it's an office that's excellent, but doesn't have teeth. And so it sounds like maybe this is fitting into a similar position.
So the Faculty Grievance Committee hears matters any matter that is related to a faculty member's employment. That could be a teaching matter. It can be a promotion matter, any matter other than tenure or termination of employment. And we also hear an appeal of an EOC decision. So there are different layers, and sometimes people come to us and we say, you really need to go to EOC first, or you should be at the Faculty Hearings Committee. This is a tenure issue, or the ombuds office. But we do a lot of kind of counseling about that. And as Mimi said, we definitely talk to people who decide they don't want to go through that process, and we counsel them on other ways to deal with other kinds of grievances.
Thank you. I think I'll just end with, I think that sometimes as a faculty member, this would be really important information to have on where to go. And so I know you said outreach isn't the thing, but it could be useful.
Sure, I'll definitely take. That's a great idea. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Beth? Okay, hearing none, then I'm going to propose again that we accept the report by unanimous consent. Does anyone object to receiving the report by unanimous consent? Okay, it's accepted. Thank you. Thank you, Beth.
Thank you all.
All right, and so that brings us to the end of our last faculty council meeting for the year 2021. A motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right. All right. Have a great break, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.